I was rinsing coffee mugs when the landline rang. Yes, the old landline I keep because emergencies never ask for a battery level. "Miss Alvarez?" a familiar voice said. I recognized him from the airport. We'd met once when a student lost her travel forms. He sounded casual at first, then careful, like someone stepping around glass. "Just wanted you to know I saw your daughter-in-law at SeaTac. She boarded the 8:16 for New York with a gentleman, looked important, black carry-on, blue blazer." I looked up at the kitchen clock, 8:19. The house smelled like vanilla and pancake mix because Delilah had texted a picture 3 minutes earlier. Mia at the counter, cheeks dusted with flour, Delilah behind her in a worn Tacoma Rainiers hoodie, smiling. I could still feel the phone buzz where the photo sat in our family thread. "Are you sure?" I asked, but I already knew how precise airport people are. They live by minutes and lists. When I hung up, my first instinct was to blame myself. Maybe I'd misread something. Maybe the hoodie picture was from yesterday. I opened the red spiral notebook I keep by the microwave, the one with soup stains on the first page and habit on the rest, and wrote 8:12 a.m. Delilah texts pancake photo. 8:16 a.m. Call from SeaTac. Delilah seen boarding to NYC. I stood very still, listening for the small sounds of a home that tells on itself. The dryer thumped. The neighbor's dog barked twice. Upstairs, my son's steel-toed boots weren't moving because Elias had already left for the shipyard. The only child voice belonged to Mia, humming in her room while she sorted markers by color. Nothing strange, nothing out of place. And yet something was sideways, like a picture frame you keep straightening because it will not listen to the wall. I told myself not to jump. I've spent too many years jumping into other people's feelings first. So I made a rule in ink, right under the timestamps. No conclusions without a second source. It's a small thing, drawing a line like that. But my hand stopped shaking after I did. I texted Delilah, "Everything okay? Need any eggs?" She replied, with a heart and a photo of batter on a whisk. No timestamp on an image tells you the whole story. It only tells you a story someone selected. I looked closer. In the background, the window light was soft, like early morning, but there was no reflection in the glass, just brightness, no radio playing, and she always plays the radio in the mornings. Little silences know how to shout. I called out to Mia, asked if she wanted strawberries with breakfast. She ran in, ponytail crooked, and said, "Mom said she'll do the pancakes. She's almost done." I nodded and kissed her head. "Tell Grandma what color syrup you want," I said, and she giggled because syrup isn't a color. I wrote that down too, because even jokes have context when you're trying to remember a day later. It's funny how your life can look normal from one angle and impossible from another. I didn't feel angry yet. I felt like a librarian closing her finger around the right page. Calm first, collect second. Confirm third. The 3 C's. I underlined them, tore the page neatly at the perf, and tucked the strip into my pocket so I wouldn't forget what my better self decided. My phone buzzed again, this time a calendar reminder Delilah had set last week. Mortgage pre-approval meeting Friday. A polite tap from the future, asking me to show up with my signature. I breathed in, breathed out, and flipped to a clean page. "Okay," I told the notebook, because sometimes you have to tell the truth out loud before it can stand on its own feet. If she's in my kitchen, who is holding her hand at the jet bridge? I kept the rest of that morning quiet on purpose. Sometimes the truth is just a whisper, and you scare it off by slamming doors. I started with small things, the kind of things you ignore, until they start waving their arms. On the fridge, there was a permission slip from Mia's school for the spring field trip. Delilah had signed it last night while we were clearing plates, a quick flourish I barely noticed. Today I held it next to an old allergy form she signed in September. Same name, same cursive D, but the slope on the Y's had changed and the pressure points were lighter, as if a different hand had memorized the shape but not the weight. I took a photo and printed it on the school copier when I dropped Mia off. In my red spiral notebook, I drew 2 columns, witness and proof, and taped both signatures under proof with a piece of washi tape Mia had given me. Then came the tamales. Delilah has always sworn by my neighbor Doña Inez's pork tamales, the kind with the hominy masa that tastes like holidays. But 2 nights ago, Delilah swatted the fork away from Elias's plate and said pork made her feel foggy, as if she'd always been chicken and greens. I know people change. I also know people who change don't usually rewrite their cravings in one afternoon. I scribbled, food preference shift, long-standing versus sudden. On the walk home, Mia chattered about markers and recess and the art teacher's earrings. Then she said it plain as rain. Grandma, Mom taught me cursive with her left hand yesterday. She said it was a challenge. I almost tripped on the sidewalk crack. Left hand? I asked, casual like we were talking about glitter glue. She said, skipping. It was messy, but she said practice makes it perfect. I smiled and kissed her hair and wrote left hand in my pocket note, even though Delilah has always flicked her right wrist like a metronome when she's whisking eggs. If you're wondering where Elias was in all this, he was where men go when the air gets heavy, the garage, pretending an oil change needs a symphony. When I asked if he'd noticed anything off with Delilah, he wiped his hands on a shop rag and stared at the concrete. She's stressed, he said. Work's weird, money's tight. Let's not make a thing out of nothing, Ma. I've loved that boy since before he had a name, but sometimes his peacekeeping is just fear in a nice shirt. Ray caught me on the sidewalk as I came back from the school. She was in scrubs, coffee in one hand, kindness in the other. You look like a woman arguing with herself, she said. I laughed because she was right. I told her the short version, the call, the photo, the signatures, the left hand. Ray's an ER nurse. She lives in triage. Okay, she said. Do it like charting. 5W1H. Who, what, when, where, why, how. Don't diagnose, just document. Think like a nurse and a librarian got married. It calmed me, having a job to do. I made tidy boxes in the notebook and filled what I could with ink instead of adrenaline. Under witness I wrote, Mia, left hand lesson, Doña Inez, tamales, school forms, signature slope. Under proof, I clipped the prints, circled timestamps, noted the lack of radio in the pancake photo. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steadied. There's a difference. Anger fogs the lens, but lists make it focus. I brewed more coffee, sat at the table with the notebook open like a small red lighthouse, and told myself the same sentence every 5 minutes until my pulse listened. I need evidence, not miracles. I thought I could outweight the feeling, but it sat there like a cold coin under my tongue. So I did the one thing that makes my mind behave. I checked what could be checked. The pancake photo Delilah sent looked innocent enough, Mia grinning, batter freckles on her cheeks, but when I tapped info, the world got slippery. The time code didn't match my clock by a few minutes, which happens, sure, but the file creation looked older than the message. The photo had been saved and resent. Not a crime, not even a sin, just curated. I wrote in the red spiral, image reused, origin prior to text. Then I underlined it and drew a tiny coffee cup next to the line so I'd remember I was calm when I found it. I called Officer Monroe because sometimes you need someone whose job is not to panic. We aren't close, but she covers our street and knows me from school pickups. I gave her the short version. She listened without rushing me. Nora, she said, don't confront. Document. If it turns into anything, the quiet notes are what hold. Her voice had that sturdy kindness you believe even when you're tired. Before we hung up, she added, if you're going to look in daylight and look like you're walking your own life. So that's what I did. I took the long way home, past the waterfront. The air smelled like rain and diesel. I wasn't hunting. I was just a woman with a tote bag and a list. Eggs, stamps, a new glue stick for Mia. But you know when your eyes catch a rhythm they've learned by heart? I saw a woman a half block ahead, ponytail, denim jacket, the same clipped stride Delilah gets when she's late and pretending she isn't. My stomach did that small drop a carnival ride does before it commits. At the corner by the cannery lofts, she paused to check her phone, and I saw her profile. Same jawline, same quick blink. If it wasn't Delilah, it was her echo. She slipped into the lobby of a building that used to be a sardine factory and now sells views in 6 figures. I didn't follow inside, this wasn't a movie, and I'm not 25. I just stood under the awning of the coffee shop and pretended to study the pastries while watching through the glass. She pressed the elevator button with the patience of someone who belongs. The doors opened. She went up and away. Back at the kitchen table, I peeled a yellow Post-it and stuck it to the inside cover of the notebook. Proof beats panic. It looked a little bossy, which is exactly what I need taped to my life. Underneath, I wrote, "Waterfront lofts, noon hour, woman matching D's profile entered lobby, didn't see unit, no exclamation points, no adjectives that could embarrass me later. Just the ordinary words that hold extraordinary days together." I don't know if you've ever had this feeling. The sense that your house is staged and you're the only one who missed the rehearsal, but that's what it was like. Everything tidy, everything polite, and somewhere a script I hadn't read. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious in that dangerous, useful way. If this was a stand-in, then what kind of show was hiding behind her? The waterfront market comes alive at dusk, the kind of place where cashiers remember your name and the kettle corn fogs the air like sweet weather. I told Mia we'd pick up cilantro and the small limes she calls baby lemons. I also told myself I was there for groceries, not answers. Sometimes you have to lie to yourself just enough to keep moving. We were tasting salsa samples when I saw her. Same ponytail, same denim jacket, same way of standing on the outside of her heels. If I'd said her name out loud, half my body would have expected her to turn. She didn't. She kept her face angled away from the hanging string lights and chose the longer path that skirted the vendor with the old film camera. It wasn't dramatic, just careful. The way people behave when they know lenses love accidents. Mia tugged my sleeve. "Grandma, can we get churros?" I said yes, because a yes to a child is sometimes a pause button for your heart. While we waited for fried dough, the woman stopped at the apothecary booth across the aisle. It's run by a couple who stock everything from elderberry syrup to heating pads. She pointed to a list on her phone, then to the shelf, blood pressure cuff, menthol rub, glucose strips. The vendor boxed it up and slid in a paper with dosage notes. She paid in cash. When she reached for the bag, her sleeve slipped back and I saw it, a narrow bracelet with a name stamped in tiny capital letters. Lena. Not Delilah. A word that fit the jawline but not the life. I didn't gasp. I didn't take a photo. I did the thing I promised myself to do. I wrote it down later in the red spiral, under a new heading called Crossovers. Then I stapled the small market receipt to the page, circled the time with a slow pen, and felt my shoulders drop 1 inch toward patience. She turned to leave, balancing the paper bag like it carried someone else's breath. She took the outer path again, just beyond the vendor's webcam. I thought about how you can learn a person by what they avoid: cameras, crowds, familiar faces. She moved like a person who exists in the margins and knows margins hold stories nobody reads. On the walk back to the car, Mia swung our bag of limes like a bell. "Grandma," she said, "Mom didn't sing the nighttime song last night. She said she forgot the words, but it's the same song every time." She demonstrated the first shaky line, and it wobbled into silence. I felt something gentle crack. Not the kind that breaks a thing, more like the sound a jar makes when the seal finally loosens. At home, I flattened the receipt under the notebook's coil and wrote, "Evening market, bracelet, Lena, purchased supplies for an older person, avoided cameras, Mia reports forgotten lullaby, no theories, just the bones." I put Mia to bed with the song Delilah never forgets, humming through the part she loves, the part that makes her laugh because I hold the last note too long. It's strange, isn't it, when a single piece of metal on a stranger's wrist can feel louder than a confession. One bracelet can tell the truth more plainly than 1,000 apologies. The next day dressed itself up like a commercial for happy families. Delilah was up before the sun, humming along to the oldies station she usually forgets to turn on, flipping pancakes with the wrist flick I could swear belonged to her right hand again. She kissed Mia's forehead, tucked a napkin into her collar like we were in a diner, and called Elias love twice in one sentence. Even the dog, who likes to judge, laid down by the stove like warmth, had finally learned our address. I wanted so badly to believe it, to let my shoulders unclench and say, "See, yesterday was a misunderstanding. Sometimes the world is noisy, and we hear what we fear." She plated pancakes for me too, blueberries arranged in a smile. "We've been talking," she said, pouring coffee into the mug I save for Sundays. About growing. About giving Mia a yard big enough for a swing set. Pre-approval is Friday. If you could be on the call, just to keep it steady. Her voice was soft. Her eyes were the kind that make you feel like you're being invited into something, not used by it. We spent the morning like a family who'd never met a lie. Mia built a block tower tall enough to need our applause. Elias fixed the cabinet hinge that's been sulking for months. Delilah scrolled listings and turned the laptop my way so I could imagine our couch in brighter rooms. At noon, we walked to the church bake sale to drop off cookies, and Pastor Jonah said the house felt lighter lately, that he was glad to see our smiles catching. I nodded because I wanted to be the kind of woman who matched her smile to her hope. Back home, Delilah stood at the sink, sleeves rolled to the elbows like a movie about good intentions. "I know the cosign is big," she said without looking up. "It's just to get us over the hump. We'll refinance once the raise hits." She named numbers that sounded responsible and plans that sounded like plans. I felt my chest warm and thought, maybe this is the part where I get to relax. Then Ray texted, "How's your heart?" 3C. Just that. 3 characters that pulled me back onto my feet. Calm. Collect. Confirm. I rinsed my plate slowly and walked to the red spiral notebook like it was a friend who'd keep me from saying yes just because yes is polite. On a new page, I wrote 3C in big letters, then underneath, ask for the lender's name on paper, independent advisor, full terms in writing, no signatures in a good mood. The afternoon stayed pleasant on purpose. Delilah braided Mia's hair like a promise. She laughed at Elias's toolbox jokes the way she did when they were new. It felt like standing in warm water and knowing a tide chart exists somewhere you can't see. I'm not proud of this part, but I need to tell it. A piece of me leaned hard toward the glow. You get tired of being the skeptic in your own kitchen, but every time I drifted, my hand found the notebook edge like a railing. That evening, as Delilah closed the laptop on a sunlit listing, she squeezed my hand. "Thank you for trusting me," she whispered. I squeezed back because I do want to trust. I just want to trust the right things. And that's when the pre-approval reminder pinged again on my phone, neat as a knock. If I sign because everything feels easy today, who pays when tomorrow remembers what it's been hiding? I went back to the waterfront because daylight makes everything less dramatic and more honest. The rain had the decency to act like a mist instead of a storm, so I could walk without feeling like I'd chosen a fight. I told myself I was there for stamps and coffee beans. My notebook, tucked under my arm, knew better. At the corner by the cannery lofts, I saw the bracelet before I saw the face. Lena, thin letters, catching the gray light. She was carrying a brown bag like the one from the market squared shoulders, chin tucked, the posture of someone who doesn't want to spill what matters. She slipped into the building with a key fob and the kind of ease you don't fake. I didn't chase. I took the long breath Officer Monroe had taught me and waited by the coffee shop across the street until a tenant came out. I caught the door, murmured a thank you, and stood in the lobby like I was gathering my mail. The elevator panel listed floors and numbers. Someone had labeled 4F with a fading piece of tape that said, "Back stairs," and a smiley face. Cute, I thought, a building with secrets that tells on itself. I pressed the call button, then changed my mind and took the stairs. They smelled like lemon cleaner and old metal. On the 4th floor landing, a door stood propped with a shoe, exactly the kind of careless kindness that lets the world run on time. Inside the hall, I heard the small domestic sounds of people making evenings. Cutlery in a drawer, the hum of a television turned down for company, and a cough. Thin, persistent, the kind that lives with you. When Lena opened 4F, she looked like a woman expecting a delivery, not me. Surprise dashed her face, and then manners covered it. Up close, the resemblance to Delilah made my stomach brace the same bones arranged by a different life. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice careful but not cold. "I'm Nora," I said, and I didn't pretend we were strangers beyond that. "I've seen you at the market. I've seen the bracelet. I don't want trouble. I need the truth." She glanced over her shoulder. A man's cough answered for her. 2 minutes, she said, and stepped into the hall, closing the door soft as if sound itself might bruise. We stood by a window with a view of cranes and water that looked like brushed steel. She didn't make me drag it out. I'm not her, she said. Not Delilah. My name is Lena. She tapped the bracelet with an embarrassed little smile, as if it had introduced her first. Sometimes I show up instead. School pickup, quick run to the store, a wave at the neighbor. People don't look too hard when they think they know you. There are moments you feel your life tilt, but the floor stays under you because you've been practicing standing. This was one. Who pays you? I asked, keeping my voice neutral, like we were choosing coffee sizes. Delilah, she said. Through someone she knows. A man. Charles. The name sat between us, heavy as a wet coat. He handles the transfers. I just fill a calendar box, do the task, go home. It helps with my dad. She nodded toward the door. Insulin. Monitors. Rent when the union cut his hours. I'm not proud. I'm not a thief. I'm just... She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Do you have anything in writing? I asked. Schedule? Payments? She hesitated, then looked at me as if she'd decided I was either safe or inevitable. From a folder near the shoe-propped door, she pulled a printout of timestamps, little blocks labeled with initials and errands. There were notes in the margins: PTA, hello, cilantro plus milk, blue hoodie photo, and bank transfers from a burner-looking account that deposited on Fridays. I wanted to be angry at her. I wanted to sort the world into boxes labeled them and us and tape them shut. But the cough came again from inside the apartment, and I could see her hands tremble when she held out the paper. Fear is a poor accountant. It will spend any currency you give it. I don't want to hurt your family, she said. I just needed the money. She said it was harmless, that it kept things smooth. Smooth. A word that sounds like a compliment and lives like a lie. I wrote what she said in my red spiral while she watched, my pen leaving a steady trail I could follow later when feelings tried to rewrite the day. 4F Cannery Lofts. Lena equals stand-in. Paid Fridays via Charles. Last name unconfirmed. Tasks. Visibility, errands, staged normal. Purpose. Create appearance of presence. Under it, I added, Dad in 4. F. Chronic care purchases match. Then I asked the last question I could hold without shaking. When Delilah isn't here, where is she? Lena looked down at the bracelet like she needed her own name to steady her. Meetings, she said. Dinners. A yacht once. Always with Charles. He's connected. Port contracts. She calls him a sponsor. Sponsor. Not friend. Not lover. A word that makes arrangements sound like opportunities and people sound like projects. I thanked her. I told her I wouldn't make a scene in her hallway or her life. I slid the notebook back under my arm and walked the stairs down to the street, the cough following me until the door latched and the building returned to breathing. On the sidewalk, the cranes looked like patient animals waiting to be told the next thing to lift. My phone buzzed with a reminder about pre-approval, insistent as a woodpecker. I didn't answer it. I wrote one last line standing there in the mist. There's a show. Someone's directing it. I've only glimpsed the wings. I found Elias in the garage with the hood of our old sedan lifted like a confession booth. He was wiping a wrench that didn't need wiping. I stood beside him and let the silence be room-sized, not weapon-sized. When he finally spoke, it came out the way truth does when it's been holding its breath too long. Ma, there's something I didn't tell you, he said. Delilah introduced me to a guy who could help with the shop. Bridge money. Short term. His name's Charles. He said the last word like a match he regretted striking. I didn't gasp or scold. I looked at the grease under his nails and remembered teaching him to tie his shoes, how proud he'd been of loops that stayed. How much? I asked. He shrugged. Small. Enough to make me stupid. Then, when I didn't flinch, he added numbers. It came fast. No bank lines. Just an email DocuSign and a wire. He said we'd refinance once the work picked up. It hasn't. I've been making interest only. Sometimes Delilah covers a payment and says not to worry. Do you have the documents? I asked. Originals, not screenshots. He handed me a folder that looked like it had been hiding. Inside, a term sheet that talked big and said little, account numbers blacked out in the weird way people do when they want to look careful without being useful. A repayment schedule with boxes checked by someone who doesn't cook with calendars. The interest line was coy. The late fee line was bold. No lender letterhead I recognized. No address. Just a P. O, a box, and a signature named C.T., like a person afraid of their own last name. I opened the red spiral notebook on the workbench and wrote down what the papers forgot to tell me. My pen made a steady sound against the page, like a train finding its track. That evening, Delilah arrived to pick up Mia from piano and came into the kitchen like good news. "Nora," she said, soft as a blanket. "About Friday, could you be on the pre-approval call? It's just a formality. If you could co-sign, we'd lock a rate. It's temporary." Her smile landed on the word like a hand over a hot stove. I could feel old habits waking up, the ones that tell you harmony is worth any price if you pay quietly. I took a breath and heard Ray in my head. Calm, collect, confirm. "I'll need the lender's full information," I said, "and the full loan packet in writing. Also a copy of any current debts, including private notes and bridge loans. Original documents, not photos." Delilah's eyes flickered. Just a flash, the way power lines do when the wind changes. "You don't trust me," she said, not accusatory, just disappointed enough to get me to hold the door open for her feelings. "This is our family." "That's exactly why I'm writing things down," I said. My phone vibrated. A message from Officer Monroe blinked on the screen like a porch light. "No signatures until you have originals. Ask for source. Don't be rushed." I set the phone face down and met Delilah's gaze as kindly as I could, without giving away the only thing I owned, outright my no. "I made a list," I said, and I did. I tore a clean page from the spiral and titled it 7 Questions Before You Sign. Beneath it, in my neatest school secretary print, who is the actual lender? Full legal name and physical address. What are the exact terms, rate, variable triggers, late fees, balloon clauses? Where do funds originate and who services the loan? When do payments escalate or convert? What dates? What amounts? Why is a cosign required? What changed since the initial approval? How do we prepay or exit without penalty? What's in writing? Who is the independent advisor reviewing this on our side, not theirs? Delilah smiled the way people do when they mean to change the subject by complimenting your penmanship. "You always were thorough," she said. "I'll get you what you need. But can we agree in principle? They need to know we're serious." "In principle," I said. "I don't commit to something I haven't met on paper." She set her tote on the chair and tried a different door. "Elias's dream is right there," she said, tapping the folder like it was a sleeping animal. "Don't make him wait because you're nervous." "I'm not nervous," I said. "I'm precise." Her mouth made a shape that wanted to be gracious and couldn't quite find it. "I'll email you tonight," she said, gathering her bag. "Let's keep this simple." After she left, I opened voice memos and labeled the last 10 minutes Kitchen Talk Cosign Request. Not because I plan to trap anyone, because I don't trust memory when Hope edits it. Elias came in leaning on the door jamb, face tired in that man way that asks for mercy without saying, "Please." "I didn't know about the stand-in," he said. "I swear, I thought the money would give us breathing room." "I believe you," I said. "Breathing room doesn't come from contracts that refuse to introduce themselves." I slid him the list. "These are the questions we ask before we let our names hold up someone else's roof." He traced the number 7 with his thumb like it might bless him. "What if Charles backs out if we push?" "Then he wasn't a lender," I said. "He was a leash." I tucked the notebook into the drawer by the stove, the one with rubber bands and birthday candles, and the things that keep a house from falling apart in ordinary time. The pre-approval reminder dinged again from my phone, tidy as a metronome. I let it count out the seconds and didn't move to silence it. If money is the rope, I thought, standing very still in my own kitchen, then who's pulling the other end and how long have we been letting them tug? I went to the church when it was between things, no service, no choir, just the soft hum buildings make when they're at rest. I like rooms that don't ask anything of you. I slid into a back pew and let my breath catch up to my bones. The lights were low. The wood smelled like hymns and lemon oil. I didn't come to bargain with God. I came to stop bargaining with myself. For years I've been the family shock absorber. If there was a sharp corner, I rounded it. If a conversation could splinter, I wrapped it in padding and hoped. Somewhere along the way, I started believing that silence was kindness and that letting a lie sit was better than making a truth stand. It was easier to apologize for bumps than to build rails. I opened the red spiral notebook on my lap and wrote a sentence so plainly it felt like a confession. My misbelief. Keeping quiet keeps us together. Under it, I wrote the truth that scared me a little with how simple it was. Silence delays pain. It doesn't heal it. I heard Pastor Jonah's steps before I saw him. He has a way of walking that says he knows how to enter a moment without claiming it. He sat 2 rows up and turned just enough to meet my eyes. "You look like a woman carrying water in both hands," he said, voice low. "I'm trying not to spill," I said. He nodded. "Imperfect metaphor, but peace isn't the absence of waves. It's learning which shoreline you're responsible for." He let that hang. Then, gently, impromptu advice hour. "You don't have to raise your voice to raise a standard." "I don't want to hurt anyone," I said. "Boundaries aren't punishments," he said. "They're instructions for staying." I smiled because I felt seen and a little called out. He knows how to be kind without moving the goalposts. "So write them down," he added. "Say them once, in daylight, and let the paper do the repeating." After he left, I stayed. The quiet felt like a good listener. I wrote a new header in block letters, Boundary File. Beneath it, my operating system in 3 arrows. Document, notify, enforce. No drama, no speeches that make you shaky with their own echo, just a way through. On the page, I drafted the bones of a message. No barbs, no poetry. A notice. When I was done editing it twice with my fingertip, I took a photo for the little courage it gives me to see ink turn into action, and I walked home. At the kitchen table, I opened my email and typed the subject line before I could overthink it. Notice of boundary documentation request and pause. I addressed it to Delilah and Elias. I CC'd Ray because nurses know what to do with facts, and Officer Monroe because she asked me to keep a paper trail if anything turned strange. I didn't CC the world, just the people who live inside the weather of this house. Then I wrote, "Hi. For everyone's clarity, I'm putting this in writing. Effective immediately, I will not co-sign, verbally agree to, or otherwise support any new loan, refinance, or pre-approval related to the house or shop until I have the full legal name and physical address of the lender, the complete loan packet, terms, rates, fees, triggers, prepayment language, in writing, a list of current obligations, including private notes, bridge loans, confirmation of independent review by an advisor on our side. For family communications, please use email or text. No requests through Mia. No phone calls for signatures. If it isn't in writing, I will treat it as if it wasn't asked. This is not a fight. It's a pause for proof. I love you both. Proof protects us. Nora. I reread it aloud, not to practice a performance but to make sure my voice still sounded like me. It did. Calm doesn't have to mean soft. I hit send and watched the screen do that tiny hop a sent email does. No fireworks. Just a small, clean click in my chest, like a lock turning the right way. Then I opened voice memos and recorded a quiet note to myself. Identity shift, no more apologizing for clarity. It felt silly and necessary. Grief has its rituals, so does courage. I slid the red notebook back into its place beside the stove. The page stuck up just enough for me to see boundary file when I reached for the salt. I boiled water for tea and stood there with the kettle, listening to a house that suddenly sounded taller. Mia colored at the table, humming the lullaby I finished for her last night. Elias texted a heart, then a question mark, then okay, a small trilogy of a man learning a new language. My phone blinked with a new message from Delilah. "Can we talk?" 3 words that used to send me running toward a conversation to fix, to soothe, to smooth. I let them sit unopened for a minute. I wanted to feel the distance between urgency and importance. I wrote one more line in the notebook, a reminder to the part of me that likes to be the hero of other people's fires. I'm not here to rescue, I'm here to require. Then I opened her message, steady enough to answer like the woman who had just chosen her shoreline. I made dinner the way my mother taught me when a conversation needed a table to hold it. Nothing fancy, Just food that knows how to listen, rice that doesn't argue, chicken that forgives being reheated, a salad that looks like we tried. I set the plates early to keep my hands busy and tucked the red spiral notebook on the counter where it could see without being seen. I had already printed what needed printing: the CTAC call time, the photo metadata, the market receipt, the list of tasks Lena had shown me. They waited in a neat stack like quiet witnesses. Delilah arrived cheerful, a little too bright at the edges, carrying a pie she didn't need to bring. She kissed Mia's hair and called Elias love with the tone that ends debates before they begin. I asked her how her day was, and she said productive, like a password. I poured water, said grace, short and sincere, and watched everyone take their first bites. I've learned truth lands better when people have something warm in their hands. We were halfway through the chicken when I opened the boundary I'd sent by email and stepped into it. I printed a few things, I said, voice even. I placed the stack on the table, not like a trump card, more like a placemat. There are some timing questions I need help understanding. Delilah smiled, the kind of smile that makes other people feel unreasonable. Nora, we covered this. The loan meeting is straightforward. All we need is a yes, in principle. I'm not talking about the loan, I said, and slid the top page forward. This is the airport call, 8:16 boarding. That morning we also got the pancake photo. The metadata says it was taken earlier, saved, and resent. That can be normal. It can also be a way to make a morning look like it happened in a kitchen it didn't. Elias glanced at the paper, then at Delilah, then at me as if the table had tilted, and he was deciding whether to grab the plates or ride it out. Delilah didn't look down. You're reading too much into pixels, she said, the way people say astrology when they don't plan to listen. I turned the next page. There are the signatures from Mia's school. The slope changed. Pressure points, too. It's minor, but paired with Mia's comment about the left-hand cursive lesson, Delilah laughed softly. She's 7. She says dragons live in the laundry room. Mia, who was dunking a carrot in ranch like it was a paintbrush, looked up. Not dragons, she said solemnly. Just the creaky noise. She drew an invisible swish in the air. And Mom wrote with her left hand because she said practice makes it perfect. Today she wrote with her right again. She shrugged as if she'd just explained the weather. I watched the information land. You could feel the room hold its breath the way a crowd does when a high wire trembles. Elias put his fork down. Left hand? He asked, eyes on Delilah. She met his gaze. I was playing with Mia, she said lightly. You know I like to try new things. You don't like to try new things, he said. Not unkind, just true. You like to order the same thing and warn the waiter if they change the menu. She laughed again, but it lost its footing. Are we really doing this? Policing which hand I use? Maybe the next rule is how long my lashes can be. This isn't about lashes, I said. I placed the market receipt on top. You asked me to trust. I'm asking you to help me confirm. Because trust is a bridge and bridges have weight limits. This is the receipt from the apothecary booth. That night, a woman who looks like you bought supplies for an older man. She wore a bracelet with the name Lena on it. She avoided cameras. That doesn't sound like your errands. Delilah's smile disappeared like a light when a bulb pops. For a second, I saw something else calculating and tired. Then she leaned back and chose a different script. Nora, you've been through a lot. The widow thing, the worry thing. It can make patterns where there aren't any. I'm here, okay? I'm right here. She reached across the table, palm up, an invitation and a dare. I didn't take her hand. Not to punish, but to keep the conversation from leaving the page. I'm not trying to win, I said. I'm trying to be accurate. If there's an explanation, put it on paper and I will hold it like gold. She let her hand fall. You're embarrassing me in front of my family, she said softly. Elias closed his eyes like a man who just found the thread he didn't want to pull. We are your family, he said. If there's nothing, say nothing. If there's something, say something. Say. Delilah shook her head. This is beneath us. We have a future to build, and you want to interrogate breadcrumbs. She lifted the pie lid as if sugar might fix it. I slid the last page forward. These aren't breadcrumbs, I said. They're times and payments. I didn't say the name yet. I wanted to give her one more chance to walk herself onto level ground. Who is Charles? She blinked, not confusion surprised that the puzzle had a mouth. A friend, she said, too quickly. A professional contact. He believes in Elias's shop. Then the documents will be easy to provide, I said. Full legal name, physical address, terms on letterhead. If he's a lender, he will be proud of his introduction. Her jaw shifted, the way a person's does when the food in their mouth isn't what they expected. You don't get it, she murmured. Help me, I said. I've put my misunderstandings in ink. Put your clarifications there too. Mia tapped her fork on the rim of her cup and sang 2 notes of the lullaby, the one Delilah forgot the night before. The sound was small and brave. It broke my heart a little and made it stronger at the same time. Elias reached for the stack and read the top sheet like it might argue back. When he spoke, it was mostly to himself. The pre-approval can wait, he said. We don't sign anything until we know who we're shaking hands with. Delilah stared at him, then at me. I could feel the room making new weather. Not a storm exactly, just air that had decided it wanted windows open. I put the notebook on the table and flipped it to the page titled Boundary File. The pen felt heavy and kind in my hand. This is not a trial, I said. It's a check-in. If the story is simple, it will look simple on paper. And that's when the doorbell rang. Once, then again a polite sound that still managed to lift every hair on my arms. I knew who stood on the porch. I'd asked her to come. I'd told her I wouldn't make a scene. Delilah looked at me, then at the front door. Who is that? She asked. Someone who can help, I said, and stood, feeling the red notebook like a steady heartbeat under my palm as I walked to let the last witness in. Lena stood on the porch like someone about to apologize to a neighbor for parking wrong. I opened the door and thanked her for coming, then led her to the dining room where the table had already chosen a side simply by holding the papers we'd printed. Delilah went very still, the way a cat does right before it decides whether it's going to run or hiss. I kept my voice in the register I saved for nervous parents at the school office. Lena, this is my family. We're sorting out a timing problem. You can say no to any question. Lena nodded, eyes on the floor. Up close, she was heartbreakingly ordinary drugstore mascara, a ponytail that had outlived the day, a bracelet thin as a promise. I'm not Delilah, she began, and every fork on the table paused. Sometimes I show up instead. Quick errands, school drop-off, a hello on the porch so the neighbors see, presents. She glanced at Mia and looked away. I never mean harm. I only mean calendar boxes filled and money for my dad's medicine. Delilah laughed, one sharp syllable. This is ridiculous, she said. You pull some stranger off the street to what perform? I asked her to come, I said, because I needed to hear the shape of the story without guessing. Lena slid a manila envelope from her tote and placed it next to the rice bowl. Inside were printouts I recognized from the hallway outside, 4 F-time blocks labeled with initials, small notes like PTA hello and cilantro plus milk, and bank transfers that landed every Friday from an account named Thorn Consulting LLC. There was also a simple contractor agreement with a signature that looked careful and rushed at the same time. C. Thorn. Elias stared at the papers as if they had a temperature. You hired someone to wave at our neighbors? He asked Delilah, hurt leaking into bafflement. Delilah's face rearranged itself into wounded. I was juggling, she said. You wanted the shop. Mia needed stability. Nora needed help at the school on some mornings. I found a way to make it all smooth. None of this changes that I was here. I am here. Sometimes, I said. Other times Lena was. I tapped the agreement with my finger. Who is Charles Thorn? A friend, she said. Faster now. A professional mentor. He believes in people who hustle. My phone buzzed. I had texted Officer Monroe earlier to say we might need a sanity check. She'd replied that she would be nearby. I glanced at the screen. Outside. Want me to step in? I asked the table with my eyes. Elias nodded, small and exhausted. Delilah rolled hers, which was also an answer. Officer Monroe entered like a lullaby for adults, steady, unflustered, practiced at walking into rooms that forgot how to breathe. She introduced herself and stood, not sat, as if she didn't plan to be furniture in our scene. I slid the signatures across to her, the field trip slip from last night, the allergy form from September, the note Delilah had left on the fridge about the bake sale with the looped Ys. Without lab tools, I can only say this, Monroe said. These aren't consistent with each other. Pressure, slant, entry stroke, could be fatigue, could be a different hand. What matters is what you already wrote down. Times, witnesses, documents. Don't argue feelings. Verify facts. He has wailed. Delilah lifted her chin. Is it illegal to get help with errands? Is it illegal to have a mentor? No, Monroe said, gentle as a warning label. It's illegal to defraud. It's risky to hide. And it's cruel to ask a family to sign things they haven't met on paper. She put the documents back in the stack like she was tucking a child in. Elias rubbed his temples. Did any of this money go to the shop? He asked, voice thin. Of course, Delilah said. Charles cares about your future. He covered a payment or two when cash was tight. He believes in us. Then there will be invoices, I said, and receipts, and terms that introduce themselves with more than initials. App today. As if summoned by his own name, my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. Delilah's eyes flickered. That's him, she said softly. He can explain better. I put it on speaker. A man's voice arrived crisp and confident, the kind that has never been told to hold, only to wait while others rearrange themselves. Good evening. Charles Thorne. I understand there are concerns. Mr. Thorne, I said, because I was raised to be polite even when the pot is boiling. We'd appreciate your full legal details and the complete loan packet for any arrangement touching our home or my son's work. Letterhead, physical address, terms and prepayment clauses. You know the list. It's not matter. He chuckled like we were being charmingly fussy. Nora, is it? The world moves quickly. Opportunities don't wait for bureaucrats. Then they can wait for boundaries, I said. No signatures, no commitments, until we've met you on paper. A pause, the kind where a person recalculates how to sell you the same thing with different adjectives. Delilah assured me your family was aligned, he said, and the plural felt like he'd labeled us a project. I'm a friend, not a bank. I make things possible. If this is too uncomfortable, perhaps we should— Stop, Elias said, surprising himself. We're hitting pause. The call went silent, then ended without goodbye. In the quiet that followed, the refrigerator hummed its small, hard-working song. Delilah pressed her napkin flat with both hands. You're ruining this, she whispered. We were finally getting somewhere. Where? I asked. Into a house we can't afford with a contract we can't see? Lena cleared her throat. I can leave, she said, shame and relief braided together. You can stay long enough to be thanked, I said. You told the truth in a room that didn't make it easy. That counts. Delilah looked at me like I'd switched languages. I did this for us, she said. For Elias, for Mia, so we wouldn't feel small anymore. There it was, the defense that sounds like love and behaves like hunger. Officer Monroe gathered her card and stood to go. Paper will tell you who's small and who's standing tall, she said. Keep writing things down. When the door clicked behind her, the room sagged, then settled. I slid the manila envelope into my red notebook and wrote a line to anchor the moment. Stand-in verified. Payments tied to Thorne. No documents beyond initials. Family pause in effect. I could have ended the night there, called it enough, and maybe once I would have, but the way Charles said our name, family as a lever, not a living thing stuck under my skin. Money was the surface. Something older was moving underneath it, the kind that doesn't show up in a ledger. I stacked the plates, turned off the radio Delilah had finally remembered to turn on, and felt the question rise like a tide I could no longer ignore. If dollars were the decoy, what bloodline was being spent? I didn't sleep much after Lena left. The house made its usual nighttime noises, the heater clicking on, the dog rearranging his dreams, but my mind kept replaying that voice on the phone, the way he said family like he was measuring lumber. In the morning I brewed coffee strong enough to hold a thought and opened the red notebook to last night's line. Stand-in verified. Payments tied to Thorne. Pause in effect. Under it, I wrote a question I didn't know how to ask out loud. What does he own besides our attention? Lena texted mid-morning. Can I talk to you alone? She added a second message before I could answer. I should have told you last night. I was scared. I told her to meet me on the church steps, where there are pigeons and privacy. She came wrapped in a thrift store pea coat, hair damp, bracelet shining like a name tag for the truth. We sat on the cold stone, two women pretending we weren't freezing. She didn't make me prompt her. Charles is my father, she said. No build-up, no padding, just a small bomb placed gently between us. Not the man who raised me, the other one. The one my mother wouldn't name when I asked. He found me 2 years ago. Said he wanted to make up for lost time, in the way men say when time owes them nothing. The pigeons approved of our crumbs and minded their business. Does Delilah know? I asked. Lena nodded, shame passing over her face like a cloud. She figured it out before I did, she said. At a dinner. A joke about my eyes. He slipped. She watched. Later, she asked me questions I didn't even know I had. Then she started using it, carefully. Enough to make him generous. Not enough to make him angry. She swallowed. She told me it was a win-win. I wouldn't have to beg strangers. He wouldn't have to admit anything. His now to intipted. The words rearranged the puzzle and also made it heavier. Blood doesn't make contracts kinder. It just makes the ink darker. Did he ask you to keep quiet? I said. He didn't have to, she answered. I heard the quiet in his voice when he said my girl and looked over my shoulder to make sure no one heard. He calls money help. He calls secrets grace. And Delilah calls it strategy. She looked at me, eyes raw. I thought I was just filling calendar boxes. I was also filling his absence. There are apologies that don't fix anything and still matter. She offered one of those. I took it and put it where it belongs in the file labeled human and told her I was grateful she trusted me with the part that would have kept rotting if it stayed in the dark. Then I asked the practical things. Did she have messages, transfers, anything with names not hiding behind initials? She did. Screenshots of deposits labeled family support, a few texts from Delilah that were polite blackmail in the language of favors he won't want to fuss. Keep it smooth. Friday is fine. It wasn't a crime novel. It was the maintenance schedule for a lie. At home, I laid the new pages in the notebook and called a meeting at our own kitchen table. Not a surprise this time, not a trap, just a time with chairs. Elias came in with hands that didn't know where to land. Delilah arrived last, spine straight as if posture could argue. I talked to Lena, I said, and told the truth plain. I didn't add adjectives. I didn't spin motives. I said father and watched the word sit down. Delilah's face didn't change. Her eyes did a quick flash of cornered, then something glossier. She wanted help, Delilah said. I helped. I kept us moving. If he feels guilty for missing birthdays, why shouldn't that build something? Why should we keep being the people who say please to close doors? This was no op-ed. Because it's not your door to open with someone else's father, Elias said. The kind of sentence you only learn how to say when you're very tired and very done. He looked at me then, like he was asking for permission to stop drowning. I nodded. He turned back to Delilah. We're separating, he said. The word hung in the kitchen like cold. I'll talk to a lawyer about divorce. I'll make sure Mia has what she needs. But I won't keep living on borrowed honesty. Delilah laughed, a small, disbelieving sound, and then it broke into something meaner. You'd throw away a future because your mother got suddenly brave with a spiral notebook? I could have answered with anger. I didn't. I slid the notebook toward her so she could see the pages, the times, the quotes, the receipts, the list of questions, the note from Officer Monroe. Don't be rushed. Ask for source. This isn't sudden, I said. It's overdue. She stood, grabbed her tote, and tried one last door. You'll be back, she said to Elias, as if prophecy could do the paperwork. People like us don't get ahead by asking permission from people who already have. Maybe we don't need a head, he said softly. Maybe we need enough. After she left, the house didn't cheer. It sighed the way a structure does when you remove a weight it had been pretending to enjoy. Mia wandered in with a drawing of a dog wearing sunglasses and asked if we could tape it to the fridge. We did. The fridge hummed approval. I wrote our new rules on a clean page with block letters that didn't shake. No cosign, no wires, written-only requests. Then, because hope also needs bullet points, I wrote, Mia, counselor intake, shop, independent advisor, house, stay put. It wasn't a manifesto. It was a map with short roads we could actually walk. Elias washed dishes like penance, and then, when the sink was empty, put both hands on the counter and said, I thought the money would speed us past the part where life feels small. He looked at me with the face he's had since he was 6 and learned that not all birthdays land on Saturdays. I don't want big if it forgets honest. Honest is big, I said. It just doesn't brag. I sent one more email before bed, the kind with subject lines that remember who they're for. Boundary update next steps. I copied the same people as before and added a family counselor Ray recommended. I attached a PDF of the 7 questions before you sign and a one-pager I made called How We Communicate When We're Shaky texts for logistics, email for decisions. No messages through Mia, in person, only if we've both eaten. Then I closed the notebook and wrote a last sentence on the outside cover in black marker, where I could see it even on bad days. The truth doesn't shout, it signs. I turned off the kitchen light and felt the house taller again, not because we had won, but because we had stopped bowing. Tomorrow we would do ordinary things, call a lawyer, fold laundry, Google counselors who take our insurance. Tonight I tucked Mia in and sang the lullaby she loves, the one Delilah forgot, and held the last note too long on purpose. It felt like closing a door gently and locking it not to keep love out, but to keep it in its right shape. The week after Delilah left, the house learned a new sound. Ordinary, not silence ordinary, the kind that lets you hear the kettle click off and Mia rhyming to herself while she colors. Elias and I made a routine, not because routines are magic, but because they keep your courage from evaporating. Mornings, I packed Mia's lunch and slipped a silly note under the napkin. Afternoons, Elias closed the shop an hour earlier, and we walked the long block with the dog, like 2 people remembering how to breathe at the same pace. We kept the red spiral notebook on the counter, not like a weapon, like a tool. I labeled a fresh section, proof piece, and wrote dates for simple things we'd said we would do, and then did. Elias called the lawyer. I called the counselor. We met with the advisor Ray recommended and drew a clean map for the shop. No more bridge money, just invoices that wear their names. We stayed in the house we already had and bought a swing for the maple out back. It creaks, which feels honest. Lena texted that her dad had been admitted for a new medication protocol. I dropped off soup and a bag with socks, lip balm, a crossword book, and a note that said, "Rest is not failure." She cried when she read it, embarrassed like kindness was a bill she couldn't pay. I told her the only thing I know about debt that matters. The kind that counts is the kind you choose to forgive. I didn't invite her into our family. I didn't shut the door either. Compassion with paperwork, that's my new religion. On a Saturday, Ray came over with a stack of blank forms and that nurse face that says, "We can make this simpler." We sat at the table and built a starter kit for other parents at school who could use a steadier hand than hope. I typed. She dictated. We called it Family Incident Log 10 Essentials. I read it into my phone so I wouldn't forget the tone later. Then I'll say it here, because if one other person feels less alone hearing it, that's worth my breath. Date and time. Don't trust your future memory. Give it a clock. Who was there? Names and roles. Neighbor Ray, not just neighbor. What happened? One paragraph, no adjectives. Exact quotes. Use quotation marks. Your feelings can come later. Their words are now. What you observed. Handedness, clothing, unusual behavior, neutral descriptions. Where it happened. Address or location details. Photos if safe and legal. What you asked for. Documents, terms, ID, write the request, not just the refusal. Responses received. Silence is a response. Write it down. Attachments. Receipts, screenshots, call logs, label, and staple. Next step, and by when. Decide one step. Give it a date. Then, do it. And because I have to say it, I set it in print on the bottom of the page. This is not legal advice. Seek professional help when you need it. We printed 20 copies for the school office. I tucked one behind the family calendar under a magnet shaped like a lemon. Elias started seeing the counselor solo on Tuesdays and with Mia on Thursdays. He told me he thought therapy would tell him what was wrong with him. It did something quieter. It told him what was true about him. I watched his shoulders remember where they belong. He still worries. So do I. But worry lives in smaller rooms now. Delilah sent 2 emails. The first was business questions about Mia's schedule, a request to pick her up from piano. We answered with times and places and left our feelings at home, like the adults we are trying to be. The second email was a paragraph that wanted to be an argument but settled for a history. I read it once, then put it in a folder called To Be Read with Tea, which is how I keep myself from opening doors I just closed. Boundaries are less about walls than about doorways that know they're ours. The best part, the simple part, is Mia. She sleeps. She drew a picture of our house with a swing and a dog and 3 stick people holding hands, and she labeled them with block letters that made my eyes sting. DAD, MIA, Grandma. There was space on the page for more, if more ever comes in the right shape. Kids don't need perfect, they need steady. We are learning steady. One night at the sink, looking out at the maple in its new job as playground, I realized the house didn't feel taller anymore. It felt exactly our height. I dried my hands and wrote a last small thing on the inside cover of the notebook, because I wanted the sentence to live where my fingers would touch it every day. I do not confuse kindness with silence again. Then I slid the notebook into the drawer beside the stove and smiled at the label I'd taped there in my own wonky handwriting, Proof Peace. If you're listening to this and your life feels like it's being directed by someone off stage, I hope you hear what I'm trying to say without shouting. You don't have to argue with chaos. You can outlast it with ink and daylight. Write it down. Ask for it on paper. Pause what needs pausing until the truth can stand up without your hands on it. The people who love you won't call that rude. They'll call it relief. We're not fixed. We're functioning. And functioning is beautiful. If you want a copy of that 1-page checklist, the Family Incident Log 10 Essentials, I made a clean version you can save and use. Use it like a railing on a windy day. Use it to remind yourself that calm is not the same as quiet, and that peace isn't what happens when nobody speaks. Peace is what happens when the right things are said, in writing, and kept. Tomorrow will be laundry and leftovers and Mia's spelling words. I will probably hum the lullaby too long again, and she will roll her eyes like 7, going on 17. I'll kiss her anyway. I'll turn off the kitchen light and listen to a house that tells the truth back to itself. And when life tries to rush me, I'll say the sentence that changed ours. This is a pause for proof. Peace isn't quiet, it's clarity. Tonight's story wasn't about catching a villain, it was about choosing a steadier self. When Nora stopped arguing with chaos and started writing things down, the house didn't get louder, it got honest. The red spiral notebook wasn't a prop, it was a promise. Proof before panic, boundaries before bargains. Here's how that translates to real life. Starting now. Write your boundary in 3 sentences. I won't sign or agree without full terms in writing. Use email, text. No requests through kids. Start a family incident log for the next 7 days. Date, time, who, what, where, exact quotes, attachments, next step. Use 3C, calm, collect, confirm before you respond to pressure. Take a breath, gather documents, verify with a second source. Ask the 7 questions before you sign. Who the lender is, full terms, fees, prepayment, why cosign is needed, servicing, independent review. Invite one steady person, friend, counselor, advisor, to be your paper buddy so hope doesn't edit the facts. This is practical, not punitive. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors that open when you're fully present. Carry the anchor with you. A notebook, a notes app, whatever feels like your red spiral. Let it hold what your heart shouldn't have to memorize. And if you've made mistakes, you're still welcome here. Clarity doesn't shame, it steadies. I'm not here to rescue, I'm here to require. This is not legal advice. Seek professional help when needed. If this resonated, drop 1 sentence you'll tell yourself on a shaky day in the comments, and grab the free 1-page Family Incident Log 10 Essentials in the description. Subscribe if you want more stories that trade noise for nerve. May you sleep tonight on boundaries you chose yourself.